An important part of becoming more creative involves understanding the stages involved in creativity, which is generally defined as the production of novel and useful ideas. A still well accepted model of creativity developed almost 90 years ago can be applied to organizations. This model divides creative thinking into 5 stages. A person discovers that a new opportunity exists or a problem needs to be solved. The individual concentrates on the problem and becomes immersed in it. He or she will recall and collect information that seems relevant, dreaming up alternatives without refining or evaluating them. A person keeps the assembled information in mind for a while. He or she does not appear to be working on the problem actively, but the subconscious mind is still emerged and arranging the information into meaningful new patterns. The problem conquering solution flashes into the person's mind at an unexpected time, such as on the verge of sleep, during a shower, or while running. Insight is also called the aha. It's an experience, all of a sudden, something clicks. The individual sets out to prove that the creative solution has merit. Verification procedures include gathering supporting evidence, using logical persuasion, and experimenting with new ideas. Application requires tenacity because most novel ideas are first rejected as being impractical. Even though creativity usually follows the same steps, it's not a mechanical process and cannot be turned on and off. Much of creativity is intricately woven into a person's intellect and personality, including being observant and having sharp intuition. Creative leaders, like creative workers of all types, are different in many ways from their less creative counterparts. They are devoted to their fields and enjoy intellectual stimulation, and they challenge the status quo, which leads them to seek improvements. The specific characteristics of creative people can be grouped into 4 areas: knowledge, cognitive abilities, personality, and passion for the task and the experience of flow. Cognitive abilities comprise such abilities as general intelligence and abstract reasoning. Creative problem solvers characteristically have well above average cognitive intelligence. Creative people generate solutions to problems in a short period of time. They also maintain a youthful curiosity throughout their lives, and the curiosity is not centered just on their own field of expertise. Instead, their range of interests encompasses many areas of knowledge, and they're enthusiastic about puzzling problems. These mental workouts help sharpen a person's intelligence. Creative people are able to expand the number of alternatives to a problem, thus moving away from a single solution. Yet, the creative thinker also knows when it's time to narrow the number of useful solutions. The popular belief that creative people are right brain dominant, whereas left brain dominant people are more logical, detail oriented, and analytical, has been challenged by brain specialists. Recent neuroscience research suggests that developing original ideas is a process and not something that stems from one side of the brain. A major cognitive contributor to creative thinking is intuition. The term refers to an experience based way of knowing or reasoning in which weighting and balancing evidence are done unconsciously and automatically. Personality factors, or the non cognitive aspects of an individual, heavily influence creative problem solving. Creative people tend to have positive self image without being blindly self confident. Typically, they're able to cope with criticism of their ideas, and they can tolerate the isolation necessary for developing ideas. Part of the self confidence of a creative worker focuses on the belief that he or she can solve problems creatively. Talking to others is a good way to get ideas, yet at some point the creative problem solver has to work alone and concentrate. Self confidence is an influential factor for enhancing the creativity necessary for successful entrepreneurship. Creative people are frequently nonconformists and do not need strong approval from the group. They prefer to search for alternatives than worry about attaining consensus. Many creative problem solvers are thrill seekers and risk takers who find that developing imaginative solutions to problems is a source of thrill. Creative people are also persistent, which is especially important for the verification and application stage of creative thinking. Selling a creative idea to the right people requires considerable follow up. Finally, creative people enjoy dealing with ambiguity and chaos. Less creative people become quickly frustrated when task descriptions are unclear and disorder exists. A dominant characteristic of creative people that is closely related to personality is a passion for the work. People will be their creative best when they feel motivated primarily by interest, satisfaction, and challenge of the work itself, and not by external pressure. Passion for the task and high intrinsic motivation contribute in turn to a total absorption in the work and an intense concentration or the experience of flow. It is an experience so engrossing and enjoyable that the task becomes worth doing for its own sake, regardless of the external consequence. Perhaps you've had this experienced when completely absorbed by a hobby or some analytical work, or when you were at your best in a sport or a dance. The highly creative leader, such as a business owner developing a plan for worldwide distribution of a product, will often achieve the experience of flow. To fully understand the contribution of personal characteristics to creativity, we note the basic formula of human behavior B equals FPE, where behavior is a function of a person interacting with the environment. In this context, certain personal characteristics may facilitate a leader's being creative, but the right environment is necessary to trigger creative behavior. The right environment includes the leader encouraging creative thinking. A unifying theme runs through all forms of creativity training. Creative problem solving requires an ability to overcome traditional thinking. The concept of traditional thinking is relative, but it generally refers to a standard and frequent way of finding a solution to a problem. A traditional solution to a problem is thus a model or most frequent solution. Creative thinking would point towards other solutions. As an example, a retail store might increase sales by shipping goods for a small fee, or by having store associates offer free fashion advice. The creative person looks at problems in a new light and transcends conventional thinking about them. The central task in becoming creative is to break down rigid thinking that blocks new ideas. At the same time, the problem solver must unlearn the conventional approach. Overcoming traditional thinking is so important to creative thinking that the process has been characterized in several different ways. The most familiar is that a creative person thinks outside the box. A caution about thinking outside the box. Workers still need to have some constraints as to how far outside the box they're permitted to think. We might conclude from these concerns about thinking outside the box that imagination is still required to think outside the box within the constraints of a required framework. To enhance creative problem solving, most organizations regularly engage in a systematic approach to develop creative and innovative ideas. We focus here on new developments in brainstorming and other creativity enhancing methods. Programs of this nature are applied to actual problems, where at the same time they provide an opportunity to improve creative thinking. The leader has a dual role in implementing creative problem solving techniques. He or she facilitates group interaction and also provides a fair share of creative output. There are creativity enhancing problem solving techniques that help to systematically collect fresh ideas, including the use of whiteboards and granting time to explore ideas and to brainstorm. Creative problem solving techniques are more likely to be effective in an organizational culture that favors creativity and innovation, and no one method is likely to be consistently better than any other method. The underlying mechanism is that each creativity enhancing method helps bring new ideas to the surface. Creativity is often referred to as a numbers game because the more ideas you try, the greater the probability of finding one that works. Several approaches to systematically collecting fresh ideas are listed here. Straightforward collection of ideas. A basic way of collecting fresh ideas is for employees to furnish them to a company database so that when somebody needs a fresh idea, it can be accessed through a company search engine. Establishing idea quotas. To facilitate having fresh ideas, the leader or manager can establish an idea quota, such as by asking staff members to bring one new idea to each physical or virtual meeting. A few good ideas will likely emerge. Making whiteboards regularly available for sketching ideas. The combination of a whiteboard and felt tip pen has proven to be an effective method for sparking creative ideas. Granting thinking time. A formal policy approach for collecting fresh ideas is to allocate an amount or a percentage of time for employees to think and experiment. The best known method for creativity improvements is brainstorming, which you've probably already done. Although brainstorming is often condemned as being superficial, it remains a key idea generation method for even the most advanced technology companies. Furthermore, brainstorming is as much entrenched into business life as are job interviews and problem solving meetings. Although it's useful to bring in employees from different departments to the brainstorming session, in depth expertise on the subject may be as important as diversity in generating innovative ideas. It is important to make sure that participants are prepared by studying the problem beforehand. Follow through in terms of implementing the best ideas is essential. If the good ideas are not implemented, brainstorming participants might become disillusioned and less inclined to share their creative thinking in the future. Brainstorming, much like other creative problem solving techniques, works best in an organizational culture that fosters innovation. It is an integral part of the famous design from IDEO Incorporated, whose employees believe passionately in innovation. As a result, they are able to argue about alternative solutions to problems, yet still unite to produce an effective design. An important part of leadership is for organizational units to find ways to continuously improve their service to external and internal customers. The Pet-Peeve Technique is a method of brainstorming in which a group identifies all the possible complaints others might have about the group's organizational unit. Through brainstorming, group members develop a list of complaints from any people who interact with their group. Although the pet peeve technique is rarely mentioned, it's potentially valuable. Group members can prepare for the meeting by soliciting feedback on themselves from various target groups. In keeping with the informal, breezy style of the pet peeve group, feedback should be gathered informally. Rather than approach target groups with a survey, members might tell others about the upcoming pet peeve session and then ask a person electronically, what complaints could you contribute? During the no holds barred brainstorming session, group members throw in some imaginary and some humorous complaints. Humorous complaints are especially important, for humor requires creative thinking. After all complaints have been aired, the group can process the information during a later session, when they draw up action plans to remedy the most serious problems. The pet peeve technique has a good spirited touch and can likely help the group improve its work processes. An established way to sharpen creative thinking is to regularly engage in activities that encourage flexible thinking. If you enjoy photography, put yourself on assignment to take a photograph illustrating a theme. You might, for example, take photographs illustrating the proper use of your company's product. Another standard technique for becoming a more flexible thinker is to ask yourself what if questions. Such questions stretch your imagination to think of possibilities not previously given much or any thought. Learning a second or third language, including sign language, can facilitate creativity because you're forced to shift mental sets. A key characteristic of creative leaders is that they can spot opportunities that other people overlook. Staying alert to opportunities can be framed as an application of the leader being mindful. Opportunity seeking is associated with entrepreneurial leadership because the entrepreneur might build an organization around an unmet customer need. Leaders need to develop creative ideas of their own to improve productivity and satisfaction. Establishing a climate or culture conducive to creative problem solving is another requirement of effective leadership. The point is that top management purposely sets out to take steps to make the organization more innovative. Vision statements and mission statements set pace, but they must be supported by the right climate or organizational culture and extensive use of the techniques. Establishing a climate for creativity includes fostering a culture of originality, leadership practices for enhancing creativity, and methods for managing creative workers. 9 leadership and managerial practices are particularly helpful in fostering creative thinking, as revealed by the work of many researchers and observers. The organizational methods already described for enhancing creativity might also be interpreted as leadership practices. Hire creative people from the outside and identify creative people from within. The most robust leadership and management practice for enhancing creativity is to hire people with the aptitude for or track record in being creative. Matching people with the right assignments enhances creativity because it supports expertise and intrinsic motivation. The leader or manager must understand his or her group members well enough to offer them the right amount of challenge. When workers are empowered, they're more likely to work through the steps for creative problem solving. Creativity can be attributed to empowered workers having a sense of self determination, which sparks creative thinking. Time and money are the most important resources for enhancing creativity. Deciding how much time and money to give a team on a project is tough judgment in terms of a call that can either support or stifle creativity. Work groups are most likely to be creative when they're mutually supportive and have a diversity of perspectives. Blends of gender, race, and ethnicity or cross functional teams are recognized as contributing to creative thought. Leaders must develop a permissive atmosphere that encourages people to think freely. Praising creative work is important because, for most people to sustain their passion, they must feel that their work matters to the organization. Organizational leaders should encourage information sharing and collaboration, which lead to the development of the expertise so necessary for creativity and to more opportunities for intrinsic motivation. Have favorable exchanges with creative workers. Another insight into encouraging a creative climate is for leaders to have favorable exchanges with group members as defined by LMX theory. Creativity is self rewarding to some extent because it's so exciting, but financial rewards for contributions to innovation help sustain a climate of innovation. Closely related to establishing organizational conditions favoring creativity is choosing effective methods for managing creative workers. The suggestions that follow supplement effective leadership and management practices in general. Give creative people tools and resources that allow their work to stand out. Creative workers have a high degree of self motivation and therefore want to achieve high quality output. Give creative people flexibility to maintain a minimum amount of structure. Many creative workers regard heavy structure, like fixed hours or required approvals, as counterproductive to creativity. Give gentle feedback when turning down an idea. Creative employees are emotionally involved with their work. As a result, they're likely to interpret criticism as a personal attack to their self worth. Employ creative people to manage and evaluate creative workers. Managers of creative workers should have some creativity ability of their own so that they can understand creativity and be credible to leaders. What constitutes creative output is somewhat subjective, but the output can be tied to objective criteria. Creativity in organizations leads to innovation in products, services, and process. All leadership and management practices that enhance creative problem solving therefore also enhance innovation. Here, we describe 7 additional leadership initiatives specifically geared towards enhancing innovation. Emphasize transformational leadership if possible. A macro perspective on a leader's role in fostering innovation is to exercise transformational leadership, creating an environment of change and growth. Continually pursue innovation. Innovation is important because a new technology can make industry obsolete or place it in grave danger. Take risks and encourage risk taking. Emphasize collaboration among employees. Most innovations stem from networks of people working together who are often dispersed throughout the organization. Choosing the right leader for a project can be key to collaboration. Use loose, tight leadership. Looseness refers to granting space for new ideas and exploration, whereas a tight approach means finally making a decision or a choice among alternatives. Innovation is also enhanced when workers throughout the organization are able to pursue absurd ideas without penalty for being wrong or having wasted some resources.